All right, so what's up? We're doing a official picks video, I guess you could say, for the Cup Series. Put out a initial thoughts preview video on Thursday, but after watching practice and qualifying, and after watching the Xfinity race, definitely felt like we had to record one more and kind of get our final thoughts out there. So, don't know if I'll be able to do this for every weekend, just because it's tough. I mean, it's same day practice and qualifying, especially for the Xfinity and Truck Series. But if I do have time for the Cup Series, I will record another video with some more going over the picks. And this is really what we post on Twitter, anyways, which is at Fast Cars FM. So head over there. You can get access to the spreadsheet yourself. But so much has changed from the video on Thursday to today. I just felt like I needed to get something out there. And of course, the goal is to get up to 1,000 subscribers. And if you're not putting videos out, if you're not, you know, especially the picks video, if you're not getting the picks video out there, it's hard to grow, especially with so many other content providers out there. So real quickly, I'm just going to go over some things that have changed from Thursday. So it's still the same track, and it's still, 200 laps, still 2 miles. It's still high tire wear, low grip. They still haven't raced here since 2020, but they were able to get some practice and qualifying. So actually did get some track time today. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to definitely give us some information I think is going to help us this weekend. Dominator points, I would say, are somewhat important. They're definitely more important than I think. The Daytona non-dominator, they're more important than Daytona, but they're not as important coming into the week as I initially thought they were. So historically speaking, usually the dominator would come from the first 2 rows. So you would look at, okay, of the drivers starting 1 through 4, who are the 1 to 2 drivers who I think are the confident that can lead the most laps. Well, you can kind of take track history a little bit and not completely throw it out the window, but I want to rely more on the eye test, right? So what am I actually seeing? What am I seeing at practice? What am I seeing at qualifying? Like, who looks like they have a good car? Especially because a lot of those stats are with the previous car model. So this car reacts a lot differently. It's a different, package. Everything is different. So it's hard to look at some of the past trends and say, yeah, that's going to continue. So there's a lot of unknowns with this race. So this might be a race to go a little bit lighter than you normally do. But as far as like lineup construction goes, I think there's a couple different ways you can go, but with a lot of guys not qualifying and starting deep in the field, I think you want probably 1 or 2 dominators in your line. So guys you are confident in can get out front, lead laps, and then pairing them with guys who have good place differential opportunity. And a lot of those guys are going to be very chalky, but they start really far back in the pack, and it's hard to ignore that place differential upside that they offer. Normally, this is a green, I don't want to say boring race, but usually there aren't a lot of cautions. And they were wrecking by themselves. I mean, single car wrecks, multiple of them. We saw multiple drivers get into the wall, multiple drivers spin, backup cars not being able to post qualifying time, spinning in qualifying. Like, if they're spinning by themselves, like, I'm sure they learned a little bit, but when you have 36 cars out on there at the one time, there's going to be cautions tomorrow. Hopefully it doesn't turn into a mess, but the stack the back mentality that we thought we were throwing away after the Daytona weekend, I think is still somewhat applicable to this weekend. I think it's still important to get at least one dominator in your line, but before I was going to lean more heavily on kind of stacking the front. Now it's, stacking the back again with, maybe a dominator or 2. So it's changed a little bit. So I just wanted to put this out there as kind of an update video, just because the video that we put out on Thursday, I feel like so much has changed. And that's why it's hard to put those videos out on Thursday, because it's all it is. It's just initial thoughts and, what we should be watching out for. And we learned a lot. So, as a NASCAR DFS player, what you want to do is take that information and then how can I apply it to help me out? Because a lot of people don't look into that. They just look at the past history. They just look at what the spreadsheet says and make their picks accordingly. So I updated all of us really here at the Fast Money Squad updated the spreadsheet. So like I said, we'll post it on Twitter. It's at Fast Cars FM. But real quickly, I'm just going to go through a driver by driver breakdown, not super in depth. I mean, if you want to read this for yourself, feel free to go on Twitter and pull it up yourself. I'll post it once I'm done recording this video. But if you look at the 10K range, I think my initial gut says, if you look at, the front row, you have Austin Cindric and Eric Jones. And then behind Austin Cindric and Eric Jones, you have Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin. Now, if the race does go green, of those 4 drivers, who are you the most confident can lead you laps? I don't think Eric Jones is going to get out there and lead laps and be a dominator, although it was great to see him have good speed. It's hard to imagine that. So again, you got to play that narrative out in your head of, okay, if a driver is in my lineup, how is he going to make the optimal? How is he going to work? How is he going to score me points? I think Cindric could hold on to the lead for a little bit, but it's hard to pass up, just the talent, the equipment, the experience, just even practice speeds, everything. Like, I think Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin are where you want to start with your line, with maybe one of them, maybe potentially both of them. If I had to pick one, I'd probably lean on Kyle. But I'm going to have lines with, one line with Hamlin, one line with Busch. I think they give you the best chance of being that early dominator. The only potential problem you're going to run into is if we don't have those long green flag runs, yeah, they might get out front, but the field's just going to get restacked over and over again. And the restarts are what is going to be wild. And then anything can happen on restart. And if Hamlin or Busch get into problems starting that high up, are really going to hurt your line, especially if they aren't picking up you those fast laps and leading you those laps. So that's why I'm hesitant to play both of them. But I think if you can get one of them in your line, and if they can lead you those early laps, I think they have a really good chance of making the optimal lineup of the expensive drivers who are in there. After that, I think, Larson is hard to ignore. I mean, this track style fits him. He should be able to run up high by the wall. And he offers some good place differential upside. You just are paying a lot of money for that. So I like starting with Hamlin or Busch and then kind of going from there, but I don't want to discount Larson's ability whatsoever. Once you get down to the 9K range, everyone's just going to slam in Harvick. Harvick wrecked in practice by himself. Again, just showing you how easy it is for these cars to spin out, especially if Kevin Harvick is doing it, which is good to see. I mean, it's good to actually have cars that spin out again instead of just suction cup to the track where they just go full throttle the entire time. So I'm glad that it's this way and not the other way. But from a DFS standpoint, it then makes it a little tricky. But I think Harvick is probably not going to get you out front, lead you any laps, but he starts, I think, on the second to last row. So that's a ton of place differential upside. So you're probably sacrificing a potential dominator if you do roster him. But if you don't roster him, there's other place differential plays, who are much cheaper than him. And then you have to think about, okay, who is a guy who I can replace Harvick with that are going to make up for the points that Harvick isn't guaranteed to get, but is most likely going to get. I think Truex is a relatively safe play just because the track style kind of fits his driving style. He's an experienced driver and normally has a good long run car. So if the race does go green, I could see Truex having a good day. But again, with all the unknowns and all the cautions I think we're going to see, it's hard not to just jam Harvick into your line. Same could be said for a lot of the drivers in the 8K range. Kurt Busch didn't get to post qualifying time because his team actually failed inspection. So he didn't actually crash. But because of that, he is being scored from a DFS perspective dead last. Anytime there's a wreck, anytime there's a single car accident, multiple car accident, mechanical failure, he is just gaining you one spot. Yes, he does have a pass-through penalty at the beginning of the race, but that doesn't worry me in the slightest anymore. Originally, it's like, oh, this is just going to be a long, green flag run. Maybe he'll get his, trapped a lap down. But with everything that I've seen, he should have his lap back in no time. So I think Kurt Busch is a slam dunk play, and he's much cheaper than Harvick. So if you're picking between the two of them, would prefer Kurt. But if you can somehow get both of them in your line with still getting a potential dominator, maybe in Hamlin or Busch, I think that is a good way to go. I think it's a good way, narrative wise, to score yourself a lot of points. I think Reddick is a good GPP play, especially if you're trying to fade maybe Chastain or Kurt in this range, just because you know they're going to draw a lot of ownership. Reddick's a guy I could see picking up a lot of fast laps, just being able to run the wall. He is kind of high risk, high reward. He reminds me of, Gregson sometimes, of like, yeah, he can pick you up those fast laps, but because he's pushing it to the limit sometimes and stepping over the line, it's really easy for him to get into the wall or have an accident and then really hurt yourself. But one guy I do like a lot is Christopher Bell. So I really high on the 8K range. If you can get Busch, Reddick, Chastain, Bell, some combination of those drivers in your line, I think it's a really good way to go. In cash, I think Chastain and Busch are going to be really popular. I still think Bell will be popular in cash, but I think he's a good GPP play. So I like Bell a lot for GPPs. 7K range, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I think if you're building multiple lines, I don't mind building maybe a contrarian, like, I think Austin Cindric's going to be the dominator, but it's just hard to imagine he stays in front of both Hamlin and Busch, especially with the amount of cautions that we have. It only takes one restart for him to potentially lose the lead. And if he gets into trouble, it's going to be game over for him. But if you are looking for an early dominator, the 7,600 price point is obviously a lot cheaper than the 10,400 and, the 10,700 price point that Hamlin carries. So it's a great way to save a ton of money if Hamlin or Busch, for whatever reason, don't work out in that top range. Almirola and Wallace, again, just easy place differential plays or gain you a lot of ownership and should gain you a lot of points. So, Chastain, Busch, Harvick, Almirola, Wallace, like, not all of these drivers are going to work out. So you have to kind of, almost like the Daytona race, you have to kind of figure out, okay, what chalk do I want to eat? Basically, what chalk do I want to play? And what chalk plays do I want to fade? And if I am fading a certain guy, who am I pivoting to? And you kind of, you can kind of figure that out for yourself. And, that's what I'll have to be doing, and what everyone else is going to be doing too, just depending on how you want to build your lines. 6K range, I like Haley a lot, again, just because. Does he have the best speed? No. Is he in the best equipment? No. But again, look at his starting place. And if we can imagine that there's going to be a lot of wrecks and a lot of cautions tomorrow, well, who's the guy who can benefit from them? Well, Justin Haley is. He's relatively cheap. I know it's somewhat expensive to pay for a College car, but I'd much rather play Haley starting 35th than playing Hemrick starting 5th. The upside difference is just drastically different there. So Haley's not going to lead you any laps. He's probably not going to pick up any fast laps, but he can gain you, positive place differential points. So like Haley a lot. A guy I like a lot for GPPs is Stenhouse. I'm really curious to see how Stenhouse is going to do this year. So he's on a single car team this year. The 37 car isn't running this year, which I think is going to benefit that team a lot. They can put all their assets, all their resources, all their time, all their energy just in the one car. And Stenhouse is a guy who, if you look historically at some of the data and some of the places he tends to run well at, it's tracks that he has a lot of horsepower. The lower grip tracks, the high horsepower or the low horsepower, high downforce package wasn't necessarily the best for him. I don't think Stenhouse is going to get a lot of ownership. And if you're playing GPPs, like, you have to find a way to get different on the field. This is going to be a really chalky slate. So I think Stenhouse is a good GPP option to get different from the field. And then the punt plays, Cole Custer, I think, is going to be extremely popular just because he won the Xfinity race. He's in an SHR car and the price point, but it's really hard to to pass up the upside that he has compared to some of the other punt plays who are down here. But again, if you think he's going to be popular, if you think he's going to be chalky, you have to figure out, okay, what chalk plays am I going to pivot off of? And he could potentially be a guy you pivot off of, and maybe you go one down below him to McDowell. No, McDowell doesn't have the same, equipment or maybe the same upside as Cole Custer. But if Custer gets into an issue, like that's a lot of people who are going to be on him. And it's going to hurt a lot of people's lines just because I do project him to be relatively high owned. Because if you're not playing Custer, I mean, who are you playing down in this range? I don't think Ty Dillon's going to be popular. I don't think Todd Gilliland's going to be popular. Maybe Corey LaJoie is going to be popular. I do like LaJoie, so I would go Custer, LaJoie, McDowell. That would be kind of my ranking there for the bottom plays. But yeah, so this is a little bit more of a traditional, picks, final interest thoughts type of video, which I know that's the video that everybody wants. I know that's more helpful probably for people when they're picking their lines. But yeah, we'll post this. I'll be updating it accordingly, over the day tomorrow before the slate locks. But just wanted to get this out there to everybody. Thanks again for all the support. Again, trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers. I think we're at like 270-ish right now. So every new person that joins, definitely recognize it and appreciate it. So yeah, that'll do it. And should be an interesting race. I think we're definitely going to learn a lot from it. And I'm just excited to, sit back, relax, and, see how it all pans out. But all right, see you.